Hello to you, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ali. This is another episode of Olive Podcast. We have changed the format of this podcast a little bit. Amir and I, the hosts, your hosts, are now making two podcasts. One you're listening to, this is geared towards intermediate and upper intermediate learners. We call that Olive Podcast. And the other one is Politically Virgin. That's geared towards advanced learners, and we call that Politically Virgin. So you can find all the information you need in the description. Feel free to visit our website and sign up for our newsletter. You will get a weekly email with all of the things we talk about, a link to our podcast and YouTube video clips, the whole shebang. So thanks again for joining us. What are we doing today, Amir?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, we decided to do things a little bit differently today. And we decided to go into the roles of an examiner, an IELTS examiner, and an IELTS exam taker, and do a speaking part as like a mock speaking IELTS exam.
Yeah. Absolutely, but before that, we do a little quick recap of the news of the world, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
COVID is still going on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still here.
Yeah,
still ruining everything for us.
Yeah, one concerning news past week was a new variant, a new strain of the coronavirus was found in Africa and in South England, and apparently this is much more infective. It's not more. No, it's not infective. The word they use is transmissible, right? Mm-hmm. So it transmits from one person to another person more easily, and everybody was up in the arms. They were panicked. Basically, the whole flights were canceled. Eurostar, the trains and everything, routes to England were closed. Wow, that was a piece of news. In other news, in the US, they have passed a relief package of $900 billion. But apparently Trump is not going to sign it. So that's the news of these days. In another Trump-related news, he has pardoned 26 people just over the past few days, and those are very controversial. Some of them, the one that concerned me the most was the pardoning of 4 Blackwater contractors who were responsible for the death of a couple Iraqis back when they were deployed there. So they were convicted of murder and manslaughter, and Trump just pardoned them. In other news, he also pardoned Kushner, Kushner's dad, his son-in-law. He pardoned, who else did he pardon?
Well,
General
he said,
Flynn.
I will pardon whoever who talks to me. So I guess that's a lot of people.
Not necessarily. No. Well, anyway. So what caught your eye? What news did interest you last week?
Well, not much. I haven't been following news this week. I've been a little busy with work. But yeah, COVID is the default news for the foreseeable future, I guess. So everyone is following the developments about the vaccine, about new strains that are rumored or are actually going around. Yeah, apart from that, no, nothing new.
Yeah, the vaccine, Moderna was also approved in the US. The EU Commission also approved Pfizer. So starting from Monday, people in Europe can get the Pfizer vaccine, which is good news, I guess.
Yes, of course, but yeah, I think everybody should work toward everybody in the world getting the vaccine, because even if somebody in some corner of the world doesn't have the vaccine, that's still a threat to everybody. And what was really interesting to me is that normally they say a vaccine takes about 10 to 15 years to develop. But what was interesting is that all the countries who are seriously working on it almost came to conclusion at the same time. Like Russia or a few other Moderna, Pfizer, famous companies, they are all getting their hands on the vaccine at the same time. And that is a little bit interesting and a little bit suspicious to me. Not in a bad way though, but it's just interesting.
What do you mean suspicious? What's suspicious about it?
Um, no, I'm saying not in a bad way, not in a like a
Well, explain.
coordination suspicion, but it's interesting because it's suspicious that they say it takes 10 to 15 years. So how is it that these companies are developing this vaccine in this short amount of time? And not just one of them, a few are doing it in such a short time frame.
Well, to my knowledge, only two companies have really successfully done it. Like for example, there is a company in France, and they have done a lot of testing, but the results they get is inconclusive, meaning it's about
Hmm.
70% effective, and that's not enough.
Hmm.
The whole
Yeah.
thing with the vaccine is the test, and it takes sometimes like a year, just the administrative process. And now when I was
Hmm.
listening to the news about the EU Commission that is responsible for this vaccine, the vaccination approval, they had to they put a um, they fastened the administrative process. Something that takes
Hmm.
normally 1 year, they did it in 2.5 months. So, and even then, they have the word tentative
Hmm.
approval next to it. So it's not absolute. They're looking for more data. They don't have enough data. Some more data has to come back for them to, actually be sure that it is effective. But for so far, the results have been very promising of Moderna vaccine and Pfizer vaccine. And well, we'll see. But no, I
Also,
don't
I
really
wanted to
believe that. What?
Yeah, I also wanted to add that one of the main reasons that vaccines are growing fast is because usually the testing phase takes maybe as long as a decade, but companies are fast tracking it because we don't have so much time to test it. So that's why a lot of vaccines are coming out, but they are not really highly effective because they haven't been tested and improved over and over. They are just like prototypes that scientists and governments are trying to fast track to production.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so let's get to the meat of our discussion. So, as I explained, we have changed the format of Olive Podcast a little bit. We do a quick recap of the world news like we did. We'll do a more in-depth uh, news analysis on Politically Virgin. So if you're interested in news, you should subscribe to that. And then we try to keep it simple, and we try to keep our podcast useful. So for that, sometimes we do a mock speaking test, like we're doing today. So I will be the examiner today, and I will ask Amir a set of the IELTS speaking test. So let's imagine that you don't know anything about the IELTS test. It takes usually about 15 to 20 minutes. It's divided into 3 parts. You have to go to your examination center, and a person will be asking you a couple of questions. The first part is basically like an interview. That's the most part. As we progress, the questions become more complex and a little bit more hard. So let's begin. Usually the examiner introduces himself. So my name is Ali. I'll be your examiner. Thank you for being here. Can I see your identification? At this point, you have to introduce yourself and then provide your identification to the examiner so that he will check your name across the registration. So far, clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your name? Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Amir, and I'm here to take the IELTS test. And here's my identification card.
All right, very good. So are you ready?
Yes, ready. Let's go.
All right. Let's talk about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it?
I have been born and raised in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran. Tehran is a very nice city, almost maybe a little too nice for
All
Iran
right,
because, okay.
good. What's the most interesting part of your town?
I like the fact that it's a four-seasoned location in the world. So we experience full-blown summers and full-blown, maybe a little short of full-blown winters. So that's what I like about my hometown.
Very good. What kind of jobs do people do in your town?
My town is a big town, and it's a capital of my country. So there are a lot of office jobs and governmental jobs that people are busy with in my hometown.
Okay. Would you say it's a good place to live?
Apart from the weather, yeah, it's a very good place to live, but it has a very polluted air. So that's a negative.
All right. Okay, let's move on to talk about accommodation. Tell me about the kind of accommodation you live in.
I live in a apartment uh, very close to the main street of the district that I live in. And yeah, I love living in an apartment.
How long have you lived there?
We have relocated about 2 years ago. So this apartment is new to me, and I still like the new apartment feeling that I'm getting from it.
Mhm. What do you like about living there?
For one thing, it's closer to the main street from our previous place. And I like the fact that when I am ready and when I get out of the house, I'm in the main street in like 30 seconds or 1 minute, and I'm ready to take a taxi, get on the bus, and get to where I'm going to.
Okay. What sort of accommodation would you most like to live in?
Well, ideally, I would like to live in a big house uh, with a yard, with a backyard and with a front lawn. Um Having a big house, a backyard, having a garage to be able to do some projects in it is really interesting to me.
Very good. That concludes part one of this test. So let's take a moment to go over some points. Uh, the IELTS test is scored on 4 different criteria. So fluency, accuracy, diction. I will say that your fluency was really, really good. In terms of diction, you had the chance to use more complex vocabulary, and I didn't really
Hmm.
notice you use any expressions.
Hmm.
Just for our folks, the people who are listening, this is very impromptu. This is improvised. We haven't prepared. Amir hasn't seen the question before, so that's the way it goes. This is as much a practice for us as it is for you. So, are you ready to move on to part two?
Yes, let's do part two.
Okay. In part two, the examiner will hand you a piece of paper and a pen. You will be presented with the topic. You have 1 minute to think about the question. And you may also take notes on the piece of paper we hand you. And then you will
Hmm.
have 2 minutes to present your response. Understood?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so do you have a piece of paper in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, very good. Let me find my timer. What the fuck? Yeah, clock. Okay, timer. All right. So, um, here's the question. Describe something you own, which is very important to you. You should say where you got it from, how long you have had it, what you use it for, and explain why it is important to you. You will have to talk about the topic for 2 minutes, for 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to think about what
Okay.
you're going to say. You can make some notes to help you if you
Okay.
wish. Go. All right. Your minute is up.
Okay. Yes. So I'll go whenever you tell me.
Go.
So from all of the things that I own and I use on a daily basis, the most important piece of equipment or belonging is my laptop. It's very important to me, and I always try to keep an eye on it and be careful that nothing happens to it. The reason I like my laptop so much is that it has the most utility among the things that I own. Um, I can do so much with my laptop. I can communicate with my friends. I can communicate with the world. I can learn new stuff. I can play games when I don't have anything to do. I can watch videos on YouTube that interest me and that teach me a lot of things. And most importantly, I can work with my laptop. As a web designer, my laptop is my weapon of choice when it comes to making money. The thing that I like about my laptop is that it's a very hardcore piece of equipment. Uh, I've had it for 5 years, and it's been getting a little bit old, but so far I'm getting a lot of performance out of it, and it's able to do most of the things that I throw at it with ease. But
Okay.
I think
Very good. That's
it's
excellent.
a minute 20.
Yeah, a minute 30. It's fine. It's one
Yeah,
to two
okay.
minutes. Uh,
Okay.
okay, here's my question. Is it valuable in terms of money?
Yes, of course, it's valuable because I paid a certain amount of money to buy it, and if I lose it, I would have to replace it with uh, with money, of course.
Would it be easy to replace?
No, unfortunately, a laptop is a rather expensive piece of equipment in my country, so replacing it is not as easy as replacing other stuff that you have.
Excellent. So now let's move on to part three. This is a two-way discussion. The questions will be a little bit more complex, in depth. And here we go. Let's consider, first of all, how people's values have changed. What kind of things give status to people in your country?
In my country, I think having money is very important. So the richer you are and the more you display your wealth, contrary to what people like to admit, you would have a high social status.
Okay. Have things uh, have things changed since your parents' time?
I don't think so. I mean, the ways to show off your wealth and maybe the means of acquiring your wealth maybe has changed, but the uh, people valuing wealth and being rich, I think, hasn't changed very much.
Okay. So finally, we'll talk about the role of advertising. Do you think that advertising influences what people buy?
Yes, of course. And I think advertising is getting more smart every day. Advertisers are finding more ways to get under people's skin without them even knowing. and they are trying to create the need that some people might not even have to be able to sell more of their products.
Okay, very good. Um, so I'm not a official examiner, but if I were to like give my overall impression of your performance, I would say that you would score 7 easily. So very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
In the future, in the specifically the you had no problem coming up with the ideas. That's very good. Your answers, generally speaking, the answers in part one should be around 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
In part two and part three, you can go a bit longer. So, like, for example, in part three, you had the chance to develop your ideas a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But overall, you used one or two expressions. That was very good to get under people's skin. That was a very good expression. And we'll analyze it. So this is how we can help you, our listeners. I'm speaking to our listeners now. This is how we can help you improve your analytical skills. We will provide you on the side of the podcast with a vocabulary list. And in that list, I will go over Amir's responses and just add my notes, how he could have done better, what other expressions or vocabulary could have used at that specific moment, and everything else that could be helpful. So we'll do that. We'll do our podcast like this from now on. To get the vocabulary list, you can become a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/olivepodcast. Individual episodes can also be purchased at a very, very low price on our Ko-fi shop. So that's kofi.com/olivepodcast. Okay, let's move on to our podcast conclusion. We conclude our podcast with a recommendation. What do you have for us?
Okay, so there's this book I want to recommend. It's sort of a science fiction, which was way ahead of its time when it was written in 1931. The book title is Brave New World. It's written by Aldous Huxley, and it's a dystopian novel. If you're not familiar with the word, utopia is a city where everything is going according to the ideals. And dystopia is quite the opposite. Dystopia is a city where everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong, and then they are living in a virtual hell. So I'm not going to reveal much about Brave New World. I think that introduction should get some interested in going and reading it. But just to give you an example, this book, the story of this book is happening in a distant future dystopian society, and they have micro-engineered and micromanaged everything in the human society. So if they are not giving people the chance to become doctors or engineers or laborers, they are actually engineering these classes of the society. The X% of its people to be engineers or laborers or doctors. They are conditioning people right from the birth to become these roles in the society. And actually, they balance the society this way. So a person who becomes a laborer doesn't even want to become a doctor because he's been conditioned from birth to follow this destiny. Now, the novel mostly talks about the achievements of the society, but it quickly turns into a dystopian society as it explores what are the drawbacks and negative points of micromanaging and engineering a society in this way.
Excellent. Did you know that utopia is actually a Greek word? In Greek, they had two words, utopus and utopus. One of them meant no place, the other meant the perfect place. So it's kind of interesting that utopia at the same time means the place that cannot be and the place that is perfect. And like you said, dystopia is the exact opposite of utopia. And the adjective for that word is utopian and dystopian. Very good. You can find a written version of our recommendation on our blog, olivepodcast.com. And to finish off, I have a vocabulary recommendation, and the word I want to tell you about today is tenacity. Listen, we do this to tell you that the best way, in fact, perhaps the only way to learn new vocabulary and better your English skills is to learn words in a context. Now, the things we talk about, we provide a context for you. And specifically, I want to tell you how a context works. Right. So, for example, with the word tenacity, I associated in my mind with a story with a couple of images. I remember the first time I heard that word in the context was a lecture by a professor who was talking about the Roman history. And he was describing how the Romans used their militaries, the military tactics employed by the Roman army. And he said that they were tenacious. That's the adjective for tenacity. Tenacious. It means that if they decided to invade a city or a village, they would not give up, right? If it took 3 years, 10 years, they would give up. They wouldn't give up. They wouldn't relinquish the attack until they got what they wanted. And that's tenacity. That's the definition of tenacity. Other words, do you have any synonyms like stick-to-itiveness, perseverance?
I think determination.
Determination is a little bit different. Just our listeners know, no two synonyms are completely 100% the same. There is a principle in linguistics called the economy principle. It basically says that no two units of a language are 100% the same. If they are, one of them will get omitted over time. So no two synonyms are really the same. They're a little bit different. They're maybe 100% similar. So perseverance and tenacity are, to my mind, connected together. That's a very good idea to learn related words together. And going back to the context, whenever I hear the word tenacity, in my mind, I picture the Roman army surrounding a town and just camping there for 3 years until they get in. That was the reputation of the Roman army. They would never give up. And so it was in the interest of the attack, the invadees, the people who were attacked, to just sort of give up, because they knew that this army is never going to go away. So that's our word for today. Do you have anything we have forgotten to mention?
No, I think we checked everything.
All right. So I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. I'm your host, Ali. And I've had the pleasure of the company of Amir. He was our testee today, and he did very, very good on his mock IELTS speaking test. Hope to see you again soon. Check our podcast, olivepodcast.com. And don't forget to enter your email so you will get our weekly newsletter, which will include everything from Olive Podcast and Politically Virgin.
Yes, thanks everybody for listening to us. I hope you learned a trick or two about taking the IELTS speaking exam. And we'll be doing more of this in the future. And hopefully it will help the test takers that are planning to take the IELTS test.